So, Boris Johnson hasn't always been popular in this city, but today he was triumphant and greeted like a hero. The Prime Minister came to Brussels today hailing his Brexit deal as excellent. But while he might have secured a new withdrawal agreement from Europe, the deal at home is far from done. A Saturday showdown in the Commons awaits, with the DUP refusing to back it and Labour saying it's worse than Theresa May's efforts. So what's in the new Brexit deal? Northern Ireland will be technically part of the UK customs territory, so it will be part of any new trade deals with the rest of the world. But EU VAT rules and tariffs will continue to apply in Northern Ireland. That's designed to avoid border checks on the island of Ireland. Instead, the border will effectively run through the Irish Sea. The Stormont Assembly will vote on these arrangements regularly. The UK and EU will now try to negotiate a free trade agreement. But there's no longer a binding commitment to a level playing field on environmental standards and employment rights. Well, here's how the deal was sealed at what might be the last EU Council for the United Kingdom. Patience is a virtue and Brexit is a school of patience. The words of Michel Barnier today, surely channeling this Brussels spider. Over in the Commission headquarters, the screen door slid open on a day of history that looked impossible just a week ago. Hate or love Brexit.
How are you feeling, gentlemen?
Never better, Boris Johnson might have replied. His photobombing Svengali Dominic Cummings would have concurred, and Jean-Claude Juncker might have been too tired to disagree. The last 3 painful years have shown many that a good divorce is better than a bad marriage.
Now is the moment for us to get Brexit done and then together to work on building our future partnership, which I think can be incredibly positive, both for the UK and for the EU. And I just remind you what I always say, that we are a quintessential European country, solid European friends, neighbours and supporters. And we look forward to working with you in building that partnership in the weeks and months to come. Thank you all very much. Jean-Claude's the boss here.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm happy about the deal, but I'm sad about Brexit. Have a good time.
But we've been here before, and the question on all their minds and ours is this. Prime Minister, what makes you think you can get this deal across the House of Commons? Time is a strange thing. A week ago, no deal seemed like the most likely scenario, and an extension almost inevitable. And although both still can't be ruled out, the Prime Minister feels that he has momentum on his side. All that's needed, a few nudges from the leaders meeting in the building below. First, the Irish, without whose approval no deal would fly.
I'll be in a position to recommend to the European Council today that the agreement be endorsed by the European Council and the joint political declaration, the future relationship, be accepted. Back in Dublin, the Cabinet is being convened under the chairmanship of the Taoiseach just to seek their agreement to that approach.
Even the Prime Minister's recent snub and tiff with the leader of Luxembourg is a bygone.
I'm positive. This is a positive way, and I really hope that we will be able to get a green light also from Westminster on Saturday, because it's not now people are in favour of Brexit or against Brexit. It's really not the matter. This is now if we are going to have a deal or a no deal. And no deal is really a lose-lose situation. A deal is not a win-win situation. But at least we are able to limit the damages. And so.
And then there's the outgoing President of the Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. He earlier suggested ruling out an extension to help the deal across the finishing line.
That's what I was saying.
So you're actually going to say officially that you will rule out an extension to Article 50?
We have a deal, so why should we have a prorogation?
Well, what if the UK Parliament votes against?
I'm not in charge of Westminster.
But he wants to be in charge of his legacy and get Brexit done and dusted before he retires in a few weeks. And so to the Chamber. Boris Johnson almost arm in arm with Angela Merkel. A victory lap for Brexit. It's as if they want to cloak the deal and the goodbyes in a sense of inevitability. A British Prime Minister celebrated like few of his predecessors at the very moment of Britain's departure. How ironic. The cheek pat from the Cypriot, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg wasn't going to miss out on a double hug. A military salute and double-handed grip and grin with President Macron. This time the goodbyes are supposed to appear final, even if the Commons end up disagreeing. It's very hard to imagine that this store isn't now closing on Britain.
Well, in a rare Saturday sitting, Mr Johnson's New Deal will be debated right here in Parliament. But in what's being dubbed Super Saturday Showdown, the opposition parties, including the DUP, Labour and the Liberal Democrats, are expected to impose it. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is here. Gary, what can we expect?
I think at the moment the numbers are pretty challenging for Boris Johnson. I met a senior official who'd gone into Parliament looking for the DUP. I don't think he found them. I think they'd gone home a while beforehand, but they doubled down on their criticism of the deal, having started the day saying, we're not sure about this, it really doesn't fit our requirements. They then did a litany of criticisms, which more or less ripped up the entire document. I don't think they're going back on that, so he's got to look at trying to squeeze down the number of Conservative rebels. How many who used to swim with the DUP in the ERG, the pro-Brexit wing of the party, how many of them will look to the DUP for leadership? At the moment, I'm not sure that many will follow them over there. I think he could squeeze down those numbers. I think he could squeeze down the numbers as well that get talked about at the other wing of his party, the people he threw out of the parliamentary party because they wanted to stop no deal. People talk about there being quite a lot of them who will vote against his deal. I'm not so sure. He's going to go looking amongst Labour MPs as well to see if he can get some people there who are terrified about Leave voters in their constituencies who they think will feel betrayed if they don't vote for this. And very interestingly, some of them are spooked by something that Boris Johnson has been doing today. He's been trying to get the EU, in particular Jean-Claude Juncker, to say, do you know what, even if this is voted down in Parliament, you might not get a delay. Some of them are actually going around saying it'll be no deal if we don't vote for this. Now, I suspect Boris Johnson is actually being lent a hand by EU figures there, and they don't genuinely actually intend to stop a delay, but they're trying to help him at this very moment because he's got one other ally at this moment, and that is fatigue. It is wearing down bits of the country, but it's also wearing down MPs. If he wins on Saturday, some of those MPs in there who oppose him say they will mount a guerrilla warfare and make sure the bill that is needed to implement all of this doesn't get anywhere. Will they actually be able to hold the line there? Will they find that the pressure wilts them? If he actually loses, well, we're in for a whole world of confusion there because the opposition MPs are completely divided about where they go next, but then there's nothing new about that.
He got an agreement with Brussels. Westminster might be trickier. Jean-Claude Juncker lent Boris Johnson some supportive language. Maybe the EU won't let Britain stay in if MPs defeat the deal on Saturday.
And this deal means that there is no need for any kind of prolongation.
But the mood in government here darkened as the DUP first said they couldn't support the deal as it stood, and then a few hours later issued a statement that damned every single element of it.
In order to avoid trying to get an extension, he has been too eager by far to get a deal at any cost. And the fact of the matter is that if he held his nerve and held out, he would of course got better concessions which kept the integrity, both economic and constitutional, of the United Kingdom.
I'll make a decision about myself. The DUP are an important feature in this because if they have concerns about Northern Ireland and the Union, we really have to listen to them.
There is a sense in which this is an awful lot like the Northern Ireland backstop that Britain didn't go for a while ago, is it?
Well, there are elements of that, and that's exactly the point.
Here's how MPs lined up the last time when the Commons defeated Theresa May's Brexit deal. But under Boris Johnson, there's been a renewed attempt to get the DUP on side, maybe getting all the Brexiteer rebels in the ERG as well. But if the DUP are lost, that leaves Boris Johnson needing converts from the opposition, maybe more than this suggests, as some pro-EU Tories may feel they can't support his deal, making Britain more distant from the EU. Jeremy Corbyn called on all Labour MPs to reject the deal.
It creates a customs union border down the Irish Sea. And secondly, it does nothing to deal with all the concerns that we've raised during Theresa May's premiership and his about a race to the bottom in rights and protections. And we believe the deal he's proposed is heading Britain in the direction of a deregulated society with a sell-off of national assets to American corporations. So as it stands, we cannot support this deal and will oppose it in Parliament on Saturday.
John Woodcock was a Labour MP until last year. His agonising matches quite a few MPs still in the party.
You voted against Theresa May's deal 3 times, but this time, Saturday, your vote's in play.
Yes, it is, and I say that with a really heavy heart because there are things about this deal which do seem to be at least as troubling as Theresa May's agreement. But I have been saying to
on the left, you were in the Labour Party until recently, would say more trouble.
Well, no, that's right.
Boris Johnson wooing the DUP a couple of weeks ago at the Tory conference. The DUP withdrew its support, primarily because it felt the deal locked Northern Ireland into much closer relations with the EU than the rest of the UK, and didn't give it a realistic chance of opting out of that. The deal allows for a straight vote amongst members of the Northern Ireland Assembly on the plans in 5 years' time. The current Assembly is split about 50-40 in favour of close alignment with the EU, and there's pretty much no one who thinks that's going to shift in the DUP's direction.
Those forces that would want to be more closely aligned with Europe are in the majority when it comes to a head count in the Northern Ireland Assembly. That's the count you're working on. This is a permanent backstop. This isn't temporary. There's no way those people are going to vote against alignment with the EU, is there?
There absolutely is. It may well be the case that we have in 4 years' time a decision by a majority in Northern Ireland to say, do you know what? We no longer want to be part of these arrangements. That's democracy, and it's in keeping with the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, the DUP don't believe that at all. They think you've stitched them up, and there's no way that Assembly will vote to come out of these arrangements.
Well, we carry on talking to our friends in the DUP over the days ahead.
In the last hour, the Prime Minister gave a press conference in Brussels. To win over some MPs, Boris Johnson would like them to believe the choice on Saturday is his deal or no deal, and the EU won't grant a delay.
We heard what Jean-Claude Juncker had to say earlier about the fact that he personally didn't think there should be an extension to the Brexit process beyond October the 31st. Did you ask your fellow leaders to make a similar commitment, and have they done so?
Well, my view has been very clear for a long time. I don't think that delay is to the advantage of the UK or indeed of the whole of Europe. I think people want to move this thing on.
The EU doesn't seem to have promised him no delay, and his opponents are sharpening their messages for the moment when they hope he's defeated.
If the House of Commons rejects this deal, then it will be clear that the only way that it would be able to be resolved, I think, to be honest, this has been clear for a long time, is through having a people's vote.
It's clear to you, but it's not clear in there, is it? There aren't the numbers for it yet.
To be fair, 280 MPs did support it earlier in the year. That wasn't quite enough for a majority, but that was a pretty strong showing.
Boris has made progress. This is now only the second worst deal in history. It's still utterly shocking. We would head into years of acrimonious negotiations where the EU would have the whip hand over us, and frankly, this is not Brexit.
Boris Johnson could look a lot like Theresa May by the end of Saturday, couldn't he? And that's not a look he wants.
I think the Prime Minister looks very different from his predecessors.
A different reception here. They were clapping him. They certainly looked relieved. The chance of getting Brexit off their agenda. A chance, but absolutely no certainty.
Gary Gibbon reporting. Well, joining us now is the Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen, who is a leading member of the Brexit-supporting European Research Group. Now, Andrew Bridgen, last night on our programme, you said if the DUP can't support the deal, it makes it that much harder for me to support. So you're in a dark place tonight.
Yes, but what I've seen of Boris Johnson's New Deal, it's clear that he's confounded his critics. He's got the withdrawal agreement reopened. He's got rid of the backstop trap. He's changed the political declaration from close regulatory alignment to a free trade agreement. This is far more palatable to me, and for that political declaration of a free trade agreement, it looks like Brexit, it smells like Brexit. That's Brexit for me, and I'm willing to suck up quite a lot on the withdrawal agreement I don't like to facilitate getting to Brexit.
Including abandoning the DUP, who you said you would stand by. So in one night, you got rid of the DUP.
Well, I'm very disappointed that my colleagues in the DUP at the moment can't support Boris Johnson's new deal. I hope that negotiations will continue and they may move position. But I think,
they've always
quite honestly,
said they don't want a border in the Irish Sea, and here we got one.
I've got to make a decision what I believe is in the best interest of the whole of the UK. I think quite often we've heard the phrase that Ulster says no. I think on this occasion it's going to be Northern Ireland says yes.
So forget the DUP, they're a vanishing force.
Not at all. I think there is an opportunity for Northern Ireland to have a very good economic position where they will not suffer any disruption through Brexit process. They're our only land border. The security of the Northern Ireland economy is hugely important, and they need that boost. But they will leave on the 31st when we leave as part of the United Kingdom, and they will share the benefits of every free trade agreement we have.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Andrew Bridgen. The shadow Brexit Secretary, Keir Starmer, joins us now. Keir Starmer, you've defeated previous Brexit deals
3 times.
But the likelihood of defeating this one?
Well, I think the most important point is to make this is a worse deal than the one that was put before. Not so much because of the backstop, that's never been our central concern, but if you look at the political declaration, and we've been through it word by word this afternoon, gone are the words close economic relationship with the EU, gone are any sort of sense of alignment. This is a recipe for deregulation, getting off the level playing field, and that slippery slope away from the sorts of protections we've had in place for a very long time.
But you seem to be ignoring the body language today. My God, have you ever seen such hugs? I mean, quite extraordinary, the change of mood over there. They're all embracing and the rest of it. That surely indicates we're going to have a very close and loving relationship.
John, I was here when Theresa May's deal first came through, and we had the hotline from Luxembourg. You know, the deals come through. It was 10 o'clock at night in the House of Commons. 24 hours later, the deal was dead. So the vote is on Saturday. Lots of people are coming to me today to say, is it better, is it worse? It is fundamentally worse, because this idea of turning away from the EU, saying we don't really want a close relationship anymore, economic relationship, that's going to cost jobs, that's going to cost in the economy. But more than that, it's a slide towards an American-style economy, because if you move away from this model of high standards, protecting people at work, you inevitably end up in a different place, and that is a politically wrong direction of travel.
But you don't have the numbers, do you? The fact is he's going to scrape through.
Well, he sounds very confident, but this is the same Prime Minister only weeks ago was saying he'll never have a border in the Irish Sea. He says one thing one day and another thing the next day.
Well, they've dumped the DUP, and it's clear that Andrew Bridgen has dumped the DUP.
Well, fine, let's see what the numbers are on Saturday. My job is to make sure the Labour Party votes against this deal.
Can you guarantee the whole of your party?
Well, I'm doing my level best, as I always do. There are people, a vast majority have been to a big briefing this afternoon and recognise this is a bad deal. Some people are concerned. I've always respected and understood that. I will talk to them today, tomorrow and into Saturday. But fundamentally for Labour, a deregulated economy that strips away workplace rights and takes us off that level playing field is the wrong direction of travel. It's worse than Theresa May's deal, and I can't see how anybody who voted against Theresa May's deal could possibly contemplate voting for this.
What if you lose on Saturday? I mean, what happens then?
Well, we will press on. If we lose, then we will have to move to the implementation stage, and there are plenty of opportunities there to battle on. But I'm planning that we win on Saturday and that we stop a bad deal taking us to a bad place for our country, because I know people want to get on with it, but getting on with a bad deal is fundamentally the wrong thing to do.
Now, let me ask you one other question which came up today, which is the fate of Louise Ellman.
Yes.
The Jewish MP from Liverpool, who says yet again that the stalking horse of anti-Semitism is alive and well in her constituency.
Well, I'm really sad to see her go, really sad to hear her words, and it's another low moment for us. We have been putting in place better processes, but we've got to do more, and I will be bringing it up next week at the Shadow Cabinet. I want to make the Labour Party a party where people like Louise feel they can return as soon as possible. That is my job, our duty.
But on the eve of what could be a general election, the whole idea that there's still MPs, Jewish MP here, who feel that the party simply isn't tackling it.
John, it's a low moment. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Our job is to pull together and to make sure that we have a Labour Party to which people like Louise and others feel that they can return, and I will do everything I can to achieve that.
Keir Starmer, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, joining us now is, I'm so sorry, Georgina Wright. Thank you very much indeed, Georgina. And you're from the Institute of Government.
For government.
Can I ask you first of all what you make generally of this deal? It appears people are saying it's a harder Brexit than any of the offers so far.
So it's really interesting when you actually look at the legal text. So most of the Theresa May's withdrawal agreement is still there. The big changes are around the Northern Ireland Protocol. So we know that the backstop has gone. And also the political declaration signals that the UK could seek a looser trading relationship with the EU. So those are the big kind of changes.
Now, I mean, what about this border in the North Sea? It sounds in the Irish Sea. It seems a very amorphous sort of a thing.
So basically, the UK and the EU primary concern was how to minimise those checks along the border. Now what they found was, and what they've decided, is that the whole of the UK would leave the EU's customs union at the end of the transition period. That gives the United Kingdom the freedom to strike its own free trade agreements, to set its own tariffs. But of course there is still that issue of that border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. And what they've decided is that Northern Ireland would remain part of the EU's area of industrial goods. So basically means that it would continue to apply EU standards and also for agri-foods, and it would also apply EU customs duties and EU tariffs. There would be certain exceptions, so if you live in England and you want to move to Northern Ireland, you'd obviously not have to pay any tariffs there, and likewise there would be certain products that wouldn't be subjected to EU tariffs, but all of that has yet to be determined.
Hardly any surprise then that the DUP oppose it, because it does sound actually as if a concept of a bit of Northern Ireland is still in the European Union even when we've left.
So, of course, the aim and that space for compromise was very small, of course, between the EU and the UK. But what they seem to have found is an arrangement that would enable to minimise the checks along that border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. But then there would be checks, inevitably, along the Irish Sea.
I want to ask you a non-academic question. Is it possible to evaluate whether this is a harder Brexit deal than the previous two deals, or is it somehow something different?
Well, this is what I always like to say. This is, if this deal were to pass on Saturday and we venture into the next phase, this is sort of the end of the beginning, but it's not the beginning of the end. The whole future relationships, so our trading relationship with the EU, our security arrangement, all of that has yet to be negotiated, and all of that is up for grabs. At the moment, what you're seeing and the signals is that the UK government wants to seek a looser arrangement, and that would signal a harder form of Brexit, but who knows, everything has yet to be negotiated.
And briefly, where will we be in 5 years' time? Better off?
Who knows? Everything depends on those negotiations, not only with the EU, but also how other negotiations go with countries around the world.
You're not prepared to venture an opinion?
No, not at this stage. I think everything is so unpredictable. I'm not going to take my bets right now.
Georgina Wright, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now let's go back over to Matt Fry in Brussels. Matt.
Thanks, John. Well, welcome back to Brussels, and with more on the deal, I'm now joined by the Belgium MEP, Philip Lambert, who's also a member of the Brexit Steering Group, which handles all things Brexit here in Brussels. Thanks for coming back on the programme, Philip. What were the EU concessions that allowed this deal to be born?
Well, we allowed to go back to the first version of the backstop, which is limited to Northern Ireland. And we also conceded a degree of say for the Stormont institutions, which was not in the first version of that backstop. That's about it.
Which is a good idea, because it's a democratic thing to do, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely, but what you don't want to do is to give a veto right to specifically one party, which was the UP. And this is why what they wanted, this is what they didn't get. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've said that they won't support the deal.
But there's also a massive leap of faith here on the part of the EU for the UK to do the customs checks that are required.
Yeah, indeed, and it also requires a leap of trust on our side to let a third country do EU customs checks. So, you know, we're in this together. To be honest, at the moment, I do not have a lot of trust in the sincerity of the British government, but not, well, you know, the United Kingdom is more than Boris Johnson, so...
I mean, it was amazing to watch the Prime Minister here today, because I've never seen a British Prime Minister with a few exceptions, have celebrated in the way that he was in the moment of departure. Why is that? Why were they all, slapping him on the back? Is that to kind of cloak this deal into a sense of inevitability?
I don't know. Ask them. Maybe they thought to themselves, good riddance.
Yeah. Good riddance.
I don't know. I really don't know. But one thing is sure is that we've been here before. We have closed the deal with the British Prime Minister. That was a few months ago, and the Prime Minister was named Theresa May back in time. She enjoyed at that time a nominal majority in the House of Commons, and now we are striking a deal with another British Prime Minister that doesn't even have a working majority in the House of Commons. So I think that, well, he will need to clear the same hurdle, but starting from lower. Good luck.
Right. And what happens if the House of Commons doesn't vote for the deal on Saturday? Jean-Claude Juncker really went out of his way today, as did some others, to say we don't really think an extension is a good idea. But if there's no deal on Saturday, an extension will be asked for.
Matt, you've been in Brussels quite often, and you know that this is cheap talk by Jean-Claude Juncker because it's not his decision. It is the Council's decision, that is the 27 heads of state and government, and who speaks for them? Donald Tusk. What did Donald Tusk say? He said, if a request is coming our way, we will consider it, which I think is what he had to say. Because
he had to say that, yes.
Yeah, because you cannot say we will not even consider it, yet you can't say we are going to say yes to it.
But the other leaders that we spoke to seem to go along with this line. Let's not even consider an extension.
Yeah, they have to.
They don't want to go there.
They don't want to go there, but if the request comes their way, it will be very hard for them to turn it down.
What do you say to Remainers in Britain tonight who are very angry and disappointed that a deal, which they obviously don't like, has been reached here, might get through the House of Commons, and their dreams of a people's vote is gone for now?
Not necessarily. It's up for them to decide. I mean, I am a Remainer and all my British friends are Remainers. Now is the time for them to unite and go for a second referendum. A second referendum doesn't mean automatically Remain, because
of course
a majority of the people can perfectly decide to accept the deal, and that will be end of phase one, Brexit. But again,
but there won't be a second referendum if the deal is passed on Saturday. Then it's done and dusted.
But that again depends on the democratic majority in the House of Commons. And indeed, if there is a democratic majority there, well, I'm fair play and I'm a Democrat, and well, I will accept it. It's not my preferred choice, but if it comes to that, it will.
Okay. Philip Lamberts, thank you very much indeed.